How to obtain an FAA private pilot's license. This article details the training and sequences which one must undergo to obtain an FAA private pilot license in the U.S. Steps. Obtain a third-class medical certificate from an aviation medical examiner, a physician certified to give flight physicals. You can find a list of qualified doctors online at FAA.gov. Be prepared for the cost of training. This typically runs between $7,000 and $9,000. Paying in advance for a rental plane usually gets you a significant discount at most schools or fixed-base operations. Choose a flight school. You can find a complete list on BApilot.com or ask at your local airport. Choose a flight instructor. Different instructors have different personalities. Talk to them first and determine who fits you best. This is very important, because you are paying them a lot of money, and you don't want to learn from someone you don't like. Schedule your flight time. Generally, a block of 2 hours is the standard. 2 to 3 times per week is recommended for best results. This time period will include a short discussion by the instructor concerning pre-flighting the airplane, the actual flight of about an hour, and a debrief period. Enroll in ground school training. This is a series of classroom training sessions covering flight rules. These typically run for 12 weeks in sessions of 1 to 3 hours per week. You can get ground school training from your instructor or online or home study books and videos. Take the flight training. This is generally broken into 3 phases. In the first phase, you learn the basics of handling an airplane. You practice takeoffs, maneuvering, and landings. This phase is preparation for your first solo. The second phase involves a combination of solo flights, an introduction to night flying, instrument flying, and more maneuvers. You are also introduced to navigation and communicating on the radio with air traffic controllers and tower operators. The third phase involves solo cross-country flights and preparation for the check ride. The flight training curriculum involves 26 topics. The flight instructor will not move on to additional lessons until the student has demonstrated mastery of the previous lesson. Don't worry about learning everything right away. The minimum training time is 40 hours. Most student pilots take 55 to 60 hours to complete the course. At the completion of the course, the flight instructor will authorize you to take your check ride. Take the written FAA test. This is given at most general aviation airports. It consists of 60 multiple-choice questions. There are practice tests online for the private pilot's license. Use them. Take your check ride. You will need to schedule this with your district's designated examiner. Your flight instructor can help you secure this appointment. The examiner will ask you a series of questions to test your knowledge and inspect your paperwork. He will then fly with you on a check ride. If you pass that step, the examiner will issue you a temporary pilot license until your permanent one comes in the mail. Tips. Don't worry if you don't move easily through this entire process. Students learn at their own pace. Most have some difficulty in at least 1 or 2 areas. Make a list of questions to ask, and don't be afraid to ask them. Ask other pilots and student pilots for advice and guidance. Figure out in advance what your budget is. Flying is not cheap. It will cost you $5,000 or more to obtain your license. This includes airplane rental $90 to $150 per hour, flight instructor time $30 to $80 per hour, ground school $300, and textbooks $150. Do your homework, and arrive on time and prepared for ground school classes. Try not to let too much time elapse between lessons, or you may forget what you've learned. Try to schedule at least 1 lesson per week. Typical timing to obtain a license is 4 to 6 months. Make sure the instructor is right for you. Take a lesson from 2 or 3 instructors before choosing a permanent one. Ask about their qualifications, number of students, and how many passed their check ride on the first try. Choose an instructor who inspires you with confidence. Warnings: don't think the mere possession of a pilot's license means you are immediately qualified to fly in adverse weather conditions. That kind of flying, as well as night and instrument flying, requires a great deal of additional training. Don't take a flight lesson if you do not feel physically up to it. Postpone the lesson until a later date.